What's going on, guys? Magdallan here. I spent most of yesterday playing through the Diablo 4 open beta, made a sorcerer, played some fire skills, and I wanted to share my impressions of the game with you guys. I want to start by saying I can't think of a game that I was more invested in the hope that it was going to be really good for a couple reasons. The first being I've just always been a huge Diablo fan. I started gaming as a result of the first Diablo game, and then I put tons of hours into Diablo 2, tons of hours into Diablo 3. I skipped Immortal, but I was really hoping this was going to be the next ARPG addiction that I would sink myself into. Not even having anything to do with content creation, just as a personal game that I would play, whether I was making videos or not. But the other reason is I've been kind of searching for the last few months for ways to expand my channel and cover other content, and I was hoping Diablo 4 was going to be a game that I could really lean into and be passionate about and perhaps appeal to a wider audience. And I have to say, I have been pretty disappointed. I think there are some good things about the game, and I want to make sure and mention those as well, but I have to admit, I started playing at 11 a.m. at my time when the beta launched, and the queues were pretty short, but by 2 hours in, I was bored, and I don't think I would have kept playing if it wasn't that I wanted to get more footage, and I wanted to make sure I at least played, a fair chunk of the beta so that it couldn't just be said immediately like, well, you just only played to level 5, so nothing you say matters. So ultimately, let's just go through some stuff. And I also kind of want to respond a little bit to I don't want to talk about any specific content creator, but a lot of the content that I've been watching on YouTube, I couldn't disagree more with. And so we'll talk a little bit about that too as we go along. So the first thing is the cutscenes in the story. I've seen a lot of people just kind of offhandedly just kind of checking the box off, like the cutscenes are amazing, story is amazing. And I just couldn't disagree more. I thought the cutscenes were horrifically cheesy. The basic thing that was going on was just cheap shock value, gore, and just kind of samey, introduce character gets corrupted or becomes demon, character dies. Just really low effort. And yes, the production values on particularly like the opening cutscene were really high, but I just wasn't into it, man. I don't know what to say. It didn't look cool to me. The character of Lilith does not seem to have the same level of weight as a Diablo or a Baal or anything like that. It just seems kind of phoned in. And then there's the actual little cutscenes that occur during gameplay. And particularly there's this part right at the beginning of the game where you are in a tavern and you're just drinking, and like the characters just look like cracked out. Like it literally looks like a junior college project that somebody did. And it seems crazy to me that got through the editing, and they were like, yeah, just go with this. And I've seen quite a few people reference that exact cutscene and be like, and yeah, this was great. And I don't know what to say about that. Maybe I'm just out of touch. Maybe I just don't know what's good. But for me, the cutscenes were, again, I would have skipped them all if it wasn't that I wanted to see what they were doing just for the purpose of being able to share with you guys how I felt about it. But for me, the cutscenes are just like a hard skip. Like it's not there for me. And then I want to talk about the first couple hours of the campaign. So on a first playthrough, if you're going to listen to the dialogues, the voice acting is pretty good, but there's so much dialogue to skip through. And you have to spend tons of time just waiting for NPCs to walk around or cross the screen or go into a building before they become interactable again. And it really just adds these weird breaks in the gameplay that feel awful to me. And then in between, when you're talking to these NPCs or watching them walk around, you yourself have to just run for ages through these mostly empty zones. There's tons of time in the first 2 hours of the game where you're just running through Snow Zone. And yep, sometimes there's some mobs that you have to fight, but there's tons of running around. And yes, it gets better to some degree as the campaign continues, but I'm thinking of it in terms of I'm going to be making multiple characters over and over and over again over the course of many leagues, over the course of years of gameplay. And I gotta tell you, I'm not looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to every time I make a character having to skip through all this dialogue over and over and over and watch the NPCs walk into a building and then run through the snow. It's not for me, man. I thought it was really rough. And the storytelling, again, this is another thing where it seems like the consensus on YouTube is that it's a 10 out of 10. No notes, like it's A++. And I couldn't disagree more. I just don't. Again, I feel like a lot of the storytelling is centered around, they got into a room and they were like, what could we do that would make like a, you know, like a super Christian mom mad? Yeah, let's kill a priest. Ooh. That's basically the methodology that seems like went into the creative process of coming through, you know, the construction process of these narratives. And it just reeked of cheese, man. It just reeked of cheese. So let's move on and talk about the combat. So there's a dodge in the game, spacebar, and it feels like it basically doesn't do anything. When you're actually in combat, it doesn't really feel like you can, you know, consistently dodge out of the way of mechanics. And I mean, some of the skill animations are pretty cool, and the sound effects that are associated with them, they do give it that, you know, the buzzword, it gives it that feeling of weight. And that's true, that's fine. But there's other parts of it that just suck. The fact that you can't really bind the click to move thing without, you know, essentially unbinding the interaction button means that unless you're willing to deal with the issue of having to like use the F key or some other keybind to pick up items and do everything else, then you're in a situation where if there's more than a handful of enemies on the screen, you can't really tactically move. And that is the combat. Combat isn't just how good does the skill animation look when I push it, it's also how does it feel for me to be in the moment of combat. And when I'm trying to move around and the dodge doesn't feel like it actually dodges, and then I click on an enemy and I don't move, so I just stand there and get hit by mechanics, that doesn't feel like good combat. So I don't understand exactly what people are meaning when they're saying that the combat is awesome. It wasn't for me. And it seems like the harder enemies, that just equals more CC. They typically, when I was encountering larger enemies or anything like that, it wasn't that they were more interesting or had more engaging mechanical elements to them. It was just that the really hard ones, quote unquote, CC you a couple times. And again, this is something that maybe is going to get ironed out. Maybe as you get past level 25 and move into the meat and potatoes of the mid-game, that you're going to have more, you know, fluid movement and so on and so forth. I can't speak to that, but all I can do is comment on the part of the game that I was able to play. And the combat for me felt kind of like playing a phone game. And I didn't really play almost any of Diablo Immortal. I installed it on my phone and gave it a shot just so that I could say I did it. But it kind of felt like that. It felt like it was really zoomed in, and the movement was weird, and as I said, the dodge felt weird, and so the combat gets like a fail from me. And then the music is completely forgettable. If you played any amount of the open beta, right now, pause this video and hum just one melody. Anything. Hum, you know, something from the music. Remember some part of the music that wasn't just boom, boom, boom. Give me something other than that, and I'm betting you can't do it, because the music is sometimes it's just like this overwhelming like drum beat thing, and then other times you're in a boss encounter and there's like basically no music, and the melodies are forgettable, and again, it just seems like they phoned it in. And especially given that you still, encounter tons of YouTube channels where they use the classic melodies from Diablo 2 as the background music for their channel. I see it all the time because the music for that game was inspired. And I'll admit I couldn't really hum any of the melodies from Diablo 3 either, so maybe that's a criticism that I would have had at the time of, when I was actually playing that game as well. But nonetheless, the music for me also was it just doesn't seem like it's there. And then the character progression as I was going through the campaign quests, another one of the mainstays, the combat needs to be good in an ARPG, and the power fantasy needs to be there. And it's not. I did not feel like I was increasing in power. It felt like every time I leveled up, the next little area I went into, it even flashes on your screen and lets you know, hey, we just scaled everything up to your level. You get more skills, but you don't feel like you're killing anything faster. It just doesn't feel good. The way that they're scaling everything seems really dumb and isn't fun to engage with. Now, I did get to a point towards the end where I had a bunch of legendary items or really good rare items, but we know from what the devs have said that the drop rates are increased for the purposes of the beta. And so you can expect that on release, you're not going to have all the items that you would need to actually push through and scale past the scaling system that they have in place. For example, on my sorcerer, I got an item that allowed me to have an extra Hydra, and I had additional levels to Hydra. I just happened to get a bunch of items that synergized with the skill I was already focusing on. And so, yeah, towards the end, it got to the point where I would just drop a couple Hydras and it would just kind of mow everything down. But that's probably not going to happen on release. And so, again, that's another thing that for me just isn't there. And then the items themselves are pretty boring. The good ones that I found, for the most part, were just additional skill levels for the skills that I already had, or ones that I would unlock shortly thereafter. And to me, that's just that's the absolute minimum effort that you could put into coming up with ways to make items interesting is, well, just make it give skills an additional level. That's kind of like, day one, first idea type stuff that I would have thought would have gotten. I'm not saying that can't be in the game. I'm just saying I would have thought that would have been kind of weeded out for the most part as the development process went on. But that seems to be the main thing that they're going for. And again, maybe this is different as you move into the end game, but I can only comment on what I've seen and experienced so far. And all the gear has these item power levels that seem to matter for the most part, but then pretty early into the game, it seems like you start to get to where that number doesn't matter a whole lot, and instead you're looking at, again, getting these affixes that increase the skill level, the tier level of your skills. And so why is it even there? Why is this power level thing on all of the items if, 10% of the way into the game, you start basically ignoring it? And then the next thing I want to talk about are the parts of the game that are these MMO elements. And I don't know what I was expecting, I guess, but it feels to me like they took the shittiest parts of MMOs and slapped them into Diablo. I don't care about occasionally seeing one other dude completing some event that I don't really want to complete myself. And I don't want to do collection and fetch quests. And this system of, what are they called, Altars of Lilith or some such, where it's just a bunch of shit that's hidden around the map that I'm going to have to go and collect, which, again, doesn't mean I'm actually going to explore. It means I'm going to look up a map, and I'm just going to tediously run to all these different places and click these things because you have to. And then, as lots of people have commented on, if they make you redo this every time there's a new season, that's going to feel awful. That's going to just be a chore. It's just going to be a thing that you have to do that feels bad over and over and over. I'm going to spend some time today and probably tomorrow as well. I want to at least create a character of each class that's available and play 5 or 10 levels of it. And maybe I'll come back with some videos where I talk about the different classes. As of now, it looks to me, based on what people are saying, that the class balance is just wildly out of whack. The Necromancer looks to be overpowered, the Barbarian is trash, the Sorcerer seems to be the go-to pick. I saw some people commenting on, for example, Ziggy D did a great video where he played the Rogue, and he was commenting on how lame the initial skills that you get are, and I think he was spot on in that department, but I do want to get in there and experience it myself. But I mean, let me know in the comments, am I just crazy here? Because it just seems like Diablo 4 should be in closed alpha, not open beta. This seems like maybe it could be the interesting starting point from which they would begin to refine systems. But we're within 3 months from full release of the game. They're already taking people's money. This thing's about to happen, and I just feel like there's way more negative than there is positive to talk about. And so let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I will be back very soon with another video. Like I said, I do want to explore the other classes a little bit, and maybe if I continue pushing through, maybe I'll figure out that I was wrong in some way. But as it stands now, I just don't think it's there. I don't think it's going to be the next ARPG addiction in my life, but maybe it will be in yours. Who knows? That's all I've got for you today. I will see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you.